step away from the Ferrari. Officer Ryan Caldwell's voice cut across the hotel entrance before Danielle Brooks could lift the key from her purse. The valet stopped mid-step. Conversations died beneath the glass canopy. A dozen faces turned toward the black woman standing beside the red Ferrari, her charcoal coat still beaded with rain, while blue and red light spilled across the polished hood like cold fire. Danielle slowly raised her hands. "The car is mine," she said. Ryan's expression did not change. Beside him, Officer Megan Price glanced at the key fob between Danielle's fingers, then at the matching lights blinking on the Ferrari. Ryan ignored both. "Put the purse down and move away from the vehicle." Somewhere behind the velvet rope, a phone began recording. Danielle could hear the soft electronic chime as another camera joined it. She placed her purse on the wet pavement and stepped back, feeling the evening wind slide beneath her collar. 5 minutes earlier, she had been preparing to enter the Grand Meridian Hotel for the most important board meeting of her career. Now strangers were studying her as though the expensive car beside her were evidence of a crime. "May I ask why I'm being detained?" she said. Ryan moved closer, one hand resting near his radio. "We received a report of someone attempting to access a vehicle that didn't belong to them." Danielle looked past him toward the hotel's revolving doors. 50 feet away, behind layers of glass and gold light, executives from Aurelius Motors were gathering upstairs to vote on the future of the company she had helped build. The meeting would begin at 8. Her watch read 7:34. "Then check the registration," she said. "The VIN is visible through the windshield. My identification is in the purse you told me to put down." Megan shifted slightly, as if ready to retrieve it, but Ryan raised a hand. "We'll decide what gets checked." The words were quiet, almost casual, yet Danielle felt their weight settle over the entrance. A white couple standing near the valet station whispered to each other. The man looked from Danielle to the Ferrari and shook his head before knowing a single fact. Danielle had seen that look in airport lounges, executive elevators, private clubs, and conference rooms where people assumed she was an assistant until she began speaking. She had learned long ago that anger would be remembered more clearly than the insult that caused it. So she kept her shoulders level and her voice steady. "Officer, I am cooperating. I am also asking you to follow procedure." Ryan gave a short laugh without humor. "People who cooperate don't tell officers how to do their jobs." The Ferrari's engine ticked softly as it cooled, each metallic sound sharp in the silence. Danielle glanced again at the hotel doors. On the 32nd floor, Charles Whitmore would be arranging documents for a vote designed to reduce her control of Aurelius Motors. He needed her delayed. He needed her absent. And suddenly, the timing of the police call no longer felt accidental. Ryan reached for the cuffs at his belt. Megan's eyes moved to Danielle's phone, visible inside the open purse. The screen had lit up with a new message: "Emergency board vote, controlling shareholder required." Danielle saw Megan read it. For one brief second, uncertainty passed across the younger officer's face. Ryan did not notice. "Turn around," he ordered. Danielle obeyed, facing the Ferrari as rain gathered along the curve of its hood. In the reflection, she saw the hotel lights, the watching crowd, and Charles Whitmore standing just inside the lobby. He met her eyes through the glass. He knew exactly who she was. Then he turned away. The metal closed around Danielle's wrists with a quiet click, colder than the rain gathering along her sleeves. She kept her eyes on the hotel glass, but Charles Whitmore had already disappeared into the lobby. At 7:36, the revolving doors continued turning as though nothing unusual had happened. Guests entered beneath warm chandeliers. Valets hurried beneath black umbrellas. No one came outside to say that the woman beside the Ferrari belonged upstairs, at the center of the meeting that would decide the future of Aurelius Motors. Ryan guided Danielle toward the patrol car while Megan picked up the purse from the pavement. "Please keep my phone with my belongings," Danielle said. "Do not turn it off." Ryan opened the rear door. "You can make requests at the station." Danielle paused before getting in. "I have provided my name, my identification, and a direct way to verify ownership. Why are you refusing to check?" His jaw tightened. "Because stolen identification exists. Fake credentials exist. People make convincing stories every day." The crowd had grown larger. Someone near the hotel entrance whispered that Danielle must have stolen the key. Another person said the Ferrari probably belonged to a guest. Their guesses moved through the rain faster than the truth. Danielle lowered herself into the back seat, careful not to let her coat catch in the door. The interior smelled of vinyl, damp fabric, and old coffee. Through the open doorway, she watched Megan remove Danielle's wallet from the purse and study the driver's license. The photograph matched. The address matched the registration card tucked behind it. A black access badge displayed the Aurelius Motors emblem beneath Danielle's name. Under her title were the words founder and executive chair. Megan looked toward Ryan. The identification appears valid. Ryan barely glanced at it. Appears is not confirmed. We can confirm it now. His voice dropped. We already have a witness report. We handle the scene first. Danielle heard every word. She also heard what was missing. No one had described what crime she had supposedly committed. No window had been damaged. No alarm had sounded. The key in her hand had unlocked the car before Ryan ordered her away. Yet the suspicion surrounding her seemed to require less proof than her innocence. That feeling was not new. Years earlier, Danielle had walked into Aurelius Motors carrying a battery design inside a worn leather portfolio. The company had been 3 months from collapse. Its investors were leaving, its prototype overheated after 40 miles, and its board had dismissed every solution that did not come from an established name. Danielle had been 30 years old, unknown outside a small Detroit engineering lab, and the only black woman in the room. Charles had mistaken her for a junior assistant and asked her to bring coffee. She had placed the portfolio on the table instead. Her cooling system later doubled the prototype's range and saved the company. When Aurelius needed capital, she invested every dollar she owned and secured voting control before anyone understood how valuable her work would become. She never chased magazine covers. She let Charles handle interviews because she preferred laboratories, factory floors, and decisions made without applause. That choice had made her powerful but invisible. Now, beneath the hotel lights, invisibility had become a weapon someone else was using against her. Megan placed the wallet back inside the purse, but before closing it, she saw a second message appear on the phone. Board session begins in 20 minutes. Failure to attend may trigger proxy authority. She looked toward the 32nd floor, then at Danielle sitting behind the glass. For the first time, Megan seemed less concerned about who Danielle might be and more concerned about who needed her removed. At 741, 32 floors above the street, Charles Whitmore stood at the head of a walnut conference table and adjusted the silver cuff of his shirt as though the evening were proceeding exactly as planned. 12 board members sat beneath recessed lights, their tablets open to a document labeled Capital Restructuring Proposal. Beyond the windows, rain blurred the city into streaks of white and amber. Charles glanced at the empty chair reserved for Danielle Brooks, then allowed a measured concern to settle across his face. Danielle appears to be delayed, he said. Unfortunately, the financing deadline will not wait. An older director named Evelyn Hart looked toward the door. She confirmed attendance this afternoon. I am aware, Charles replied. But we cannot suspend a $700 million agreement because one shareholder is late. He did not mention that Danielle was more than one shareholder. With 51% of the voting stock, she could stop the proposal with a single word. The restructuring package would issue new shares to a private investment group connected to Charles, reducing Danielle's control and transferring executive authority to him. He called it stability. Danielle had called it a quiet takeover. Down on the street, Megan stood beside the patrol car with rain tapping against the shoulders of her uniform. Ryan was speaking into his radio, requesting transport authorization, but she was no longer listening to him. The messages on Danielle's phone had changed the shape of the scene. Megan looked through the rear window. Danielle sat upright, her hands restrained behind her, her expression calm but focused on the hotel clock glowing above the entrance. What happens at 8? Megan asked through the open front door. Danielle met her eyes. A vote that should not occur without me. Ryan ended his radio call and turned sharply. Do not discuss the case with the detainee. She has not been charged, Megan said. The words surprised even her. Ryan stepped closer. We have a suspicious vehicle report and inconsistent circumstances. Megan held up the driver's license. Her license matches the registration. Her key opened the car. Her company badge matches the meeting listed on her phone. Badges can be copied. So can accusations. Silence settled between them, broken only by the soft hiss of tires on wet pavement. Ryan stared at Megan as if she had crossed an invisible line. Danielle watched without speaking. She understood the cost of being the first person to question authority in public. She had paid that cost in laboratories, investor meetings, and factory inspections where men repeated her ideas minutes after ignoring them. Megan looked toward the hotel and noticed movement behind the glass. Charles had returned to the lobby. He stood near a marble column with his phone pressed to his ear, watching the patrol car from a distance. When he saw Megan looking at him, he stepped backward into the crowd. "That man knows her," Megan said. Danielle followed her gaze. "His name is Charles Whitmore. He is the chief executive officer of Aurelius Motors." Ryan gave a dismissive breath. "And you expect us to believe he arranged this?" "I did not say that," Danielle replied. "I said he knows who I am." Megan walked toward the hotel before Ryan could stop her. The revolving door turned slowly, carrying her from the cold rain into warm golden light. Charles was already moving toward the elevators. "Mr. Whitmore," she called. He stopped, but he did not turn around immediately. That hesitation told Megan more than any answer could. When he finally faced her, his smile was polished and empty. "Officer, I am afraid I am late for an important meeting." Megan held Danielle's identification where he could see it. "Then you can save time by telling me whether you know this woman." Charles looked at the photograph, then through the glass at Danielle inside the patrol car. For 1 second, recognition appeared clearly in his eyes. Then it vanished. "No," he said. "I have never seen her before." For a moment, Megan said nothing. Charles Whitmore's denial hung between them beneath the hotel's warm lights, polished and unnatural. Through the glass, Danielle could see his reflection beside Megan's, one rigid with calculation, the other beginning to understand. Charles adjusted his jacket and glanced toward the elevators. "I have a room full of directors waiting," he said. "Unless this concerns the hotel, I cannot help you." Megan lowered the identification but did not move aside. "The woman outside says you are the chief executive officer of her company. People say many things when they are in trouble." His smile remained calm, yet a small pulse moved at his temple. "Now, please excuse me." He stepped around her and entered the elevator just as the doors opened. Megan watched the numbers rise, then turned toward the front desk. The hotel manager, a gray-haired man named Thomas Bell, had been observing from behind the marble counter. "Do you recognize the woman in the patrol car?" Megan asked. Thomas hesitated. His eyes flicked toward a security camera above the entrance. "I am not authorized to discuss guest information. I am asking whether she entered this hotel before tonight or has business here now." Thomas looked uncomfortable. "There is a private corporate meeting on the 32nd floor. For Aurelius Motors." His silence answered before his words did. "I believe so." Outside, Ryan closed the rear door of the patrol car and walked toward the driver's side. Danielle leaned forward as far as the restraints allowed. "Officer Caldwell, I need the time recorded accurately." He looked at her through the glass. "You have mentioned the time repeatedly. Because every minute matters. That is not our concern. It becomes your concern when delay is the purpose." Ryan opened the front door. "You are being detained because we received a report. Stop turning this into something larger." Danielle's voice remained even. "Who placed the report?" Ryan paused. "An anonymous caller." "At what time?" "That information is not available to you right now." "Then preserve the call recording." Ryan stared at her. Danielle held his gaze without anger. "Also preserve your body camera footage, the hotel security video, and every message sent through dispatch. I am making that request clearly while the cameras are recording." The people under the canopy grew quiet again. Her words did not sound like a frightened suspect's plea. They sounded like instructions from someone who understood exactly what evidence could disappear. Ryan shut the door harder than necessary, though the motion remained controlled. Megan returned through the revolving doors carrying a printed page Thomas had reluctantly provided. Rain touched the paper before she shielded it beneath her arm. The hotel's event schedule lists Danielle Brooks as executive chair and controlling shareholder, she said. Ryan looked at the page but did not take it. An event schedule is not legal proof of vehicle ownership. We already have the registration. We have documents that require verification. Megan stepped closer. Then verify them. We have been here 13 minutes. Ryan's face tightened. You are allowing her status to influence you. No, Megan replied. I am allowing evidence to influence me. Inside the car, Danielle felt the first small shift in the night. Not freedom. Not yet. But resistance. Megan walked to the Ferrari, leaned toward the windshield, and read the vehicle identification number aloud into her radio. Ryan reached for his own microphone, but she continued before he could interrupt. Dispatch answered after several seconds. The car was registered to Danielle Elise Brooks at the same address shown on her license. The insurance was active. No theft report existed. Megan looked directly at Ryan. The vehicle is hers. Ryan's eyes moved from the Ferrari to Danielle, then toward the hotel where Charles had vanished. Still, he did not open the rear door. The witness reported suspicious behavior, he said. Danielle watched the hotel clock change to 7:47. Upstairs, the vote was 13 minutes away. Then ask the witness what she saw, Danielle said through the narrow opening in the window. Because unlocking my own car is not suspicious behavior. Megan checked the dispatch screen inside the patrol vehicle. Her expression changed. The caller did not report a break-in, she said slowly. The caller said a black woman in a gray coat would attempt to enter the Ferrari before going inside the hotel. Danielle felt the cold settle deeper than the rain. That was not a mistaken observation. It was a description given in advance. At 7:48, the rain seemed to sharpen against the roof of the patrol car. Megan read the dispatch note again, slower this time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something innocent. They did not. The caller had not described a crime in progress. The caller had described Danielle in advance, down to the color of her coat, the location of the Ferrari, and the entrance she intended to use. Ryan reached for the screen. That could still be a concerned employee. Megan stepped aside before he could take it. A concerned employee who knew her schedule. Danielle watched them through the glass, her shoulders beginning to ache from the position of her hands. The discomfort was small compared with the pressure building behind her ribs. 12 minutes remained before the vote. Charles did not need her arrested for long. He only needed her unavailable at the precise moment the board secretary called her name. Officer Price, Danielle said, please call Marcus Reed. His number is listed under legal counsel in my phone. Ryan turned toward her. You do not direct this investigation. Then consider it a request for representation. Megan looked at the phone inside the evidence bag. Ryan shook his head. She can make a call after processing. Danielle's voice stayed controlled. By then, the purpose of this detention will be complete. Inside the hotel, the elevator indicator reached the 32nd floor. Charles stepped into the conference room carrying the same calm expression he had worn downstairs. Evelyn Hart checked the wall clock. Did you find Danielle? Security has not seen her, Charles said. We should proceed under the emergency absence provision. Another director frowned. That provision was designed for medical incapacity. It applies when the controlling shareholder cannot participate. He placed a folder before each board member. At 8, the proxy authority transfers temporarily to the executive committee. On the street, Megan opened Danielle's phone log without unlocking the device and studied the visible notifications. 3 calls from Marcus Reed. 2 from Evelyn Hart. 1 message from the board secretary warned that Charles had moved the vote forward. Megan turned the screen toward Ryan. This is not a random delay. You are making assumptions. No. I am reading a timeline. Ryan's patience thinned. We have procedures. We also have verified ownership, valid identification, no theft report, and a caller who predicted where she would be. The crowd beneath the canopy had stopped whispering. Several people now held their phones steady, recording not Danielle but the officers. Ryan noticed. His posture became more formal. For public safety, we are transporting her until the caller can be identified. Danielle closed her eyes for 1 second. She heard the rain, the radio static, and the muted vibration of her phone inside the sealed bag. When she opened them, Megan was staring at the red marks forming around her wrists. Something in the younger officer's face changed. "No," Megan said. Ryan looked at her. "What did you say?" "I said no. We do not transport someone after the evidence has cleared the original suspicion." His voice dropped. "You are out of line. Then document that." Megan reached for the rear door, but Ryan placed his hand on it first. The movement was not violent, yet it carried the full weight of rank. "Stand down." Danielle looked past them toward the hotel. Through the glass doors, Thomas Bell was speaking urgently with a security employee. A moment later, the large monitor behind the front desk changed from a welcome screen to recorded footage from the lobby. Charles appeared on the screen 20 minutes earlier, handing an envelope to a valet supervisor and pointing toward the curb where Danielle's Ferrari would arrive. Thomas raised his phone and called out through the doorway. "Officer Price, you need to see this." Ryan turned. Megan did not. She opened the rear door and met Danielle's eyes. "I am removing the restraints." The hotel clock changed to 7:51. 9 minutes remained. The restraints opened with a soft metallic release, and for the first time that evening, the sound felt louder than the rain. Danielle brought her hands forward slowly. Red marks circled both wrists, narrow and bright against her skin. She did not rub them. She only looked at Megan, then at Ryan, whose face had gone still. "You are making a mistake," he said. Megan placed the cuffs back on her belt. The mistake was continuing after the evidence cleared her. Thomas Bell stood beneath the hotel canopy, holding his phone with the security footage paused on the screen. Danielle stepped out of the patrol car and drew one measured breath. Warm air from the lobby met the cold rain at the doorway, creating a thin mist above the pavement. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The crowd had quieted. Even the phone's recording seemed less intrusive now, as if the people holding them understood that the moment had changed from spectacle to testimony. Danielle looked down at her wrists. She thought of her father in the Detroit garage where she had first learned to rebuild an engine. He used to say that pressure did not create character. It revealed what was already there. She had repeated those words before investor meetings, patent disputes, and factory shutdowns. Now they returned beneath flashing lights, quieter than memory and stronger than anger. Ryan stepped toward Thomas. "Show me the full recording." Thomas turned the screen around. The footage showed Charles entering the lobby at 7:18, speaking with the valet supervisor, and pointing toward the curb. He handed over an envelope, then checked his watch twice. Minutes later, the supervisor walked outside and made a phone call from the service entrance. Megan watched the sequence without blinking. "Can you identify the employee?" she asked. "Yes," Thomas said. "His name is Leonard Pike. He left the property as soon as the police arrived." Danielle lifted her eyes toward the elevators. The board meeting was still moving forward. 8 minutes had become 7. "Please return my phone," she said. Megan opened the evidence bag and handed it to her. The screen filled with missed calls. Danielle selected Marcus Reed's name. He answered before the first full ring. "Danielle, where are you?" "In the lobby." Charles moved the vote forward. Marcus exhaled sharply. "I filed for an emergency injunction 10 minutes ago. The judge is reviewing it now, but the board can still act unless you appear." Danielle looked at the clock. "I am coming up." Ryan spoke behind her. "This area may still be part of an investigation." Danielle turned to him. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "Then investigate the people who arranged the call." She did not raise her voice. She did not demand an apology. That restraint unsettled him more than fury might have. Megan stepped beside Danielle. "I will escort you inside and preserve the footage." Ryan stared at her. "You are choosing her version over mine." Megan shook her head. "I am choosing the record." The revolving doors moved again. Danielle entered the lobby with rain darkening the shoulders of her coat. Marble floors reflected the ceiling lights in long gold bands. Hotel guests moved aside without being asked. Some recognized her now from the event schedule displayed near the elevators. Others only saw the woman who had been placed in a patrol car and had returned without lowering her head. At the elevator bank, Danielle pressed the button for the 32nd floor. Her hand trembled once, barely visible, then steadied. Megan noticed but said nothing. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Before the doors closed, Danielle looked back through the glass toward the Ferrari, still shining beneath the rain. The car had never been the real target. Her absence had been. As the elevator began to rise, her phone displayed the time, 7:54. 6 minutes remained, and somewhere above them, Charles Whitmore believed the silence he had created would hand him the company. The elevator climbed through the hotel in a hush broken only by the soft rise of numbers above the doors. Danielle watched them pass 22, 23, 24, each one carrying her closer to the room where Charles believed her silence had already been secured. Megan stood beside her with the security footage saved on her phone and Danielle's identification held carefully in one hand. Neither woman spoke. The red marks around Danielle's wrists had begun to darken, but her breathing remained slow and measured. At 7:56, the elevator reached the 32nd floor. The doors opened onto a corridor lined with cream-colored walls, dark wood panels, and framed photographs of business leaders who had never needed to prove they belonged in their own buildings. At the far end, 2 hotel security officers stood outside the conference room. One raised a hand. "This is a closed board session." Danielle continued walking. "I am the board session." His expression changed as Megan stepped forward and displayed her badge. "Move aside." Inside the room, Charles had begun reading the emergency resolution aloud. Due to the unexplained absence of the controlling shareholder, temporary proxy authority will transfer to the executive committee until further notice. Evelyn Hart looked at the empty chair again. "This still feels rushed." Charles placed one hand on the document. "The investors require certainty." "Then they can wait 6 minutes," a voice said from the doorway. Every head turned. Danielle stood beneath the recessed lights, her gray coat damp from the rain, her wrists uncovered, her face composed. Megan remained just behind her. Charles did not move, but the color left his expression. "Danielle," he said. "We were told you had not arrived." "You were told correctly," she replied. "I was delayed downstairs." She walked to the table and placed her phone beside the restructuring proposal. On the screen was the registration record for the Ferrari, followed by the corporate filing that listed Danielle Elise Brooks as owner of 51% of Aurelius Motors. Then Megan placed the hotel security video beside it. The recording began to play. Charles appeared in the lobby, pointing toward the curb, checking his watch, and handing an envelope to Leonard Pike. No one spoke while the footage ran. The room seemed to contract around the sound of rain striking the windows. Evelyn looked from the screen to Charles. "What exactly are we watching?" Charles folded his hands. "A routine conversation with hotel staff." Megan answered before Danielle could. The employee contacted police moments later with a description of Miss Brooks, her coat, her vehicle, and the time she would arrive. The call was placed before she touched the car. One director leaned back slowly. Another removed his glasses and set them on the table. Charles tried to recover. "This has nothing to do with the proposed vote." Danielle opened the corporate registry on the screen and turned it toward the board. "It has everything to do with the vote. The caller was given my schedule. The officers were told where I would be. I was detained despite valid identification and confirmed ownership. Meanwhile, you attempted to trigger proxy authority because I was absent." Charles looked toward the company counsel. "This is speculation." The conference room doors opened again. Marcus Reed entered carrying a leather folder, his tie loosened from the rush upstairs. "No," he said. "Speculation ended 5 minutes ago." He placed a signed court order before the board secretary. "A judge has frozen all restructuring actions pending review of attempted interference with shareholder participation." Charles stared at the order. Marcus then opened a second document. It contained the company's original voting agreement, Danielle's patent transfer records, and the shareholder ledger. For clarity, he said, Miss Brooks owns 51% of Aurelius Motors. She controls this company. She owns the vehicle outside. She owns the deciding vote in this room. And someone appears to have used a false report to keep her from exercising it. The silence that followed was complete. Danielle looked across the table at Charles, not with triumph, but with the steady disappointment of someone seeing a truth she had hoped was not there. The clock changed to 7:59. Charles had spent the evening trying to make her invisible. With 1 minute remaining, every person in the room was finally looking at her. The clock reached 8, but no one called the vote. Danielle remained standing at the end of the table while rain moved across the windows in silver lines. Charles looked down at the court order as though enough concentration might erase it. Around him, the directors waited for an explanation that did not come. Danielle removed her wet coat and placed it over the back of the empty chair that had been reserved for her. The red marks around her wrists were visible beneath the white cuffs of her blouse. She did not hide them. She sat, opened the restructuring packet, and turned to the final page. This proposal is cancelled, she said. Charles finally looked up. You cannot dismiss months of negotiations because of an incident downstairs. I am not dismissing it because of an incident. I am rejecting it because it transfers control to investors connected to you, weakens employee protections, and was scheduled through an emergency provision while someone arranged to keep me outside this room. His expression hardened. That allegation has not been proven. Marcus placed another document on the table. Leonard Pike was stopped 3 blocks from the hotel. He has agreed to speak with investigators. The envelope contained $5,000 in cash and written instructions describing Miss Brooks, her arrival time, and her car. A quiet breath passed through the room. Evelyn Hart closed her copy of the proposal. Charles, did you authorize the payment? He looked toward the company counsel, but she lowered her eyes. Danielle waited. She gave him the dignity of silence, something he had not given her. At last, Charles leaned back. I authorized a security precaution. I believed Danielle might disrupt the meeting. By attending the meeting she controlled. Evelyn asked. Charles did not answer. Danielle folded her hands on the table. You did not believe I was dangerous. You believed I was inconvenient. The words were soft, yet they carried farther than anger. She turned toward the board secretary. Record the following resolutions. First, Charles Whitmore is suspended from all executive duties pending an independent investigation. Second, the restructuring agreement is terminated. Third, every communication involving tonight's police report will be preserved and released to counsel. Charles pushed his chair back. You are destroying this company over a misunderstanding. Danielle looked at him steadily. I built this company when no one else believed it would survive. I will not let you protect it by sacrificing the truth. She continued before he could respond. Fourth, Aurelius Motors will establish a legal defense fund for people wrongfully detained after providing valid identification and proof of ownership. Fifth, the company will require independent civil rights training for every executive, security contractor, and corporate partner. One director raised a cautious hand. That could cost several $1 million. Then we will spend several $1 million becoming worthy of the public trust. No one objected. The secretary recorded each motion. Danielle cast her 51% vote, and the room followed. Charles's suspension passed. The restructuring plan failed. The investigation was approved unanimously. Megan stood near the door, listening. Ryan had remained downstairs with another supervisor, reviewing the body camera footage and the original dispatch call. When Danielle finished, Megan stepped forward. Miss Brooks, I will provide a full statement. I should have challenged the detention sooner. Danielle studied her face. There was no performance in the apology, only regret. You challenged it when it mattered, she said. Now make sure the record tells the whole truth. Megan nodded. Charles rose slowly, gathering nothing from the table. At the doorway, he paused beside Danielle. After everything I did for this company, this is how you repay me. Danielle looked at the city lights beyond the rain. Accountability is not revenge, Charles. It is what remains when excuses are gone. He left without another word. The room stayed quiet after the doors closed. Danielle reached for her coat, but Evelyn gently touched the sleeve. You do not have to leave yet. Danielle glanced around the table at the people who had nearly voted away her future while she sat restrained 32 floors below. No, she said. Now we begin the meeting we should have had. : writing, variant equals, document, ID equals, 84217. The meeting continued until nearly midnight. By the time Danielle stepped out of the elevator, the rain had stopped, leaving the hotel entrance washed clean beneath the streetlights. The crowd was gone. The patrol cars had left. Only the Ferrari remained beneath the glass canopy, its red surface holding small beads of water that reflected the city in broken pieces. Megan waited near the valet desk with a folder tucked beneath one arm. Officer Caldwell has been placed on administrative leave pending review, she said. The department will release the body camera footage and the original dispatch recording tomorrow. Danielle nodded. And Leonard Pike? He admitted Charles paid him to make the call. He said he was told to describe you as suspicious and keep the officers focused on the vehicle until after 8. The truth was finally complete, but it brought Danielle no satisfaction. A plan built on prejudice had worked because too many people found the accusation believable. Charles had provided the timing, Leonard had provided the lie, and Ryan had supplied the assumption. Each person had only carried one piece, yet together they had nearly taken away everything Danielle had built. Thank you for speaking up, she told Megan. The officer looked down. I should have done it sooner. Most people recognize injustice after it becomes obvious, Danielle said. Character is deciding what to do before it becomes comfortable. Megan absorbed the words quietly, then handed her the folder containing copies of the report. They shook hands, and this time there was no badge, title, or company between them, only two women standing beneath the fading light of a difficult night. The next morning, Aurelius Motors announced Charles Whitmore's resignation and an independent investigation into the attempted takeover. The company also committed $10 million to legal assistance, community education, and accountability programs designed to protect people judged by appearance before evidence. Danielle refused every interview that asked only about the price of her car. Instead, she spoke about the cost of assumption. She explained that ownership had proven her innocence that night, but dignity should never depend on wealth, status, or a corporate title. 2 weeks later, she returned to the Grand Meridian for the first board meeting under new leadership. A young black valet named Jordan Ellis stood beside the Ferrari with a polishing cloth in his hand. He moved carefully around it, keeping several inches away as though even an accidental touch might bring trouble. Danielle watched him for a moment. Do you like cars? She asked. Jordan smiled nervously. Yes, ma'am. I am studying mechanical engineering at community college. Danielle held out the key. His smile disappeared into disbelief. I cannot take that. You are not taking it, she said. You are starting it. He looked toward the hotel manager, who nodded. Jordan opened the door and lowered himself into the driver's seat. The engine came alive with a deep, smooth sound that filled the quiet entrance. His face changed, not because he was sitting inside something expensive, but because someone had trusted him near it without suspicion. Danielle stood outside with the morning sun warming the marks that had almost faded from her wrists. She remembered her father's garage, the first engine she rebuilt, and every locked room she had entered by refusing to believe the door belonged to someone else. Kindness had not required her to excuse what happened. Strength had not required cruelty in return. She had protected her company, demanded accountability, and opened a door for someone coming behind her. Jordan turned off the engine and offered back the key. Danielle closed his fingers around it for one more second. Never let another person's first impression become your final definition. Then she walked toward the hotel as the glass doors opened before her. Behind her, the Ferrari shone in the clear morning light, but no one was looking at the car anymore. They were looking at the young man beside it as though he belonged there. Perhaps justice begins that way, not when power changes hands, but when dignity is finally recognized without needing proof. What would you have done if you had been standing beneath that hotel canopy and realized an innocent woman was being judged before anyone checked the :